Glenmorangie Research Fellow here at National Museum Scotland and co-curator of the exhibition Scotland's Early Silver. Tonight I'm going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour of the first 1,000 years of silver in Scotland. We're going to look at its first arrival with the Romans through to the arrival of the Viking Age, almost 1,000 years later. And we're going to touch on some old finds, new research, and some brand new discoveries, objects that haven't ever been on public display before. So some of the earliest silver from Scotland is here exhibited in this first case. Silver was a brand new material when it arrived with the Roman army in the 1st century AD. Here we can see some Roman silver coins. These were soldiers' pay and some prestigious pieces of silver jewellery. Most of this silver was found on Roman sites. This is a brand new material, but it's used by Roman people. So the impact here on Scotland isn't yet great, but all of that changed once the Roman Empire gave up trying to conquer Scotland and switched to a mix of power and persuasion to try and keep its frontiers safe, keep its borders secure. It started using payments of silver coins, Roman denarii, sending them north to Iron Age groups beyond the frontier to buy friends, buy off enemies, create allies, basically to divide and conquer and interfere in local Iron Age politics. Now this was a brand new material, this is a brand new sort of object. Iron Age Scotland didn't use coins, and they bear a brand new sort of art. Iron Age Scotland didn't, by and large, ever see or make naturalistic depictions of people or objects. But what use was this silver? Well, they couldn't spend these coins. They were outside the Roman Empire, but it seems they used them to show off prestigious social symbols and gifts to the gods. But this Roman politics, this geopolitics, if you like, seems to have had pretty serious implications for the Roman Iron Age. Not long after these coins were buried in an Iron Age settlement in Moray, that settlement that had been occupied for generations was abandoned, and it seems to have heralded a time of social upheaval and unrest. So if those coins are the start of Roman geopolitics and interfering in Iron Age Scotland beyond the borders, this is what happens next. And until very recently, we had very little information about Roman and local interaction in the later 3rd and 4th centuries AD. But thanks to this new discovery from a field in Fife, we have an internationally significant discovery. So this is a hoard of hack silver, chopped up vessels and objects. They are no longer valued for their beautiful classical art. They are sheer bullion, just valued for their weight of silver. And this marks a really important shift because those coins we saw, they couldn't be spent, but they also weren't melted down. In Scotland, silver hadn't become a raw material yet, whereas this stuff is made to be recycled. And we think it's the arrival, the switch from coins to hack silver for these payments that started the process of silver being thought of as a raw material and something you can make your own objects out of. Now, I said this is internationally significant, and the reason is it's the earliest example of this change from coin payments to hack silver from anywhere beyond Rome's boundaries in Europe. A really significant new discovery, and this is the first time it's ever been on public display. But as well as the earliest of these finds from anywhere beyond the border, we also have the biggest. This is a selection from a 23-kilogram hoard of hack silver found in East Lothian at a site called Traprain. Now, when this was found in 1919, scholars thought that it was the Iron Age tribes of Scotland that had hacked it up, that didn't appreciate the good classical art. But we know now that hack silver was a Roman practice. These plates and dishes, cups and flagons were chopped up inside the Roman Empire and sent north just for their weight of silver. As well as this massive silver treasure, Traprain has produced really important evidence for early silver working in Scotland, showing that this sort of silver was a raw material. It was melted down and made into new objects. So here we have a tiny ceramic crucible with analysis as showed that silver was melted, and some of the sorts of very small, delicate sorts of silver jewellery and objects that were made from this new Roman material. But Scotland had a problem. It had rapidly become to love silver, but it didn't have its own sources. Scotland's own sources of silver weren't exploited till almost 1,000 years later. Iron Age Scotland was dependent on relations with the Roman Empire for its source of new bullion. So what happened when that Roman Empire crumbled and fell to pieces? Well, these two hoards for the first time ever give us a snapshot of what happened next. These hoards from Gallcross in Aberdeenshire and from Norreys Law in Fife are a mixture of late Roman types of objects and non-Roman types of objects. And for the first time ever, they show that the practice of hacking up silver ready to be recycled continued beyond the Roman period. So what sorts of things did people in Scotland turn this new material, this silver, into? Well, perhaps the most impressive example are these objects. These are the massive silver chains. There are 9 that survive, and we're incredibly lucky to have all of them on display in the same place for the first time ever. And when I say that these are massive, I'm not kidding. The heaviest weighs almost 3 kilograms of solid silver. They are a massive investment. Most of them are undecorated. It's their scale and the material that's important here. Worn around the neck as a choker, they signal people's status and power, but it's perhaps best to see them as regalia rather than jewellery. So if those are limited to the most important people in society and also to parts of Scotland, to southeastern Scotland and northeast Scotland, what else was being used to show people's power and status? Well, the answer in the early medieval period is the brooch. Some of the earliest examples are made from silver alone. You can see those here at the top of this case. But from the 7th century, we see other designs and other materials being incorporated into early medieval silver working. So here we have a set of different silver brooches, some of which feature tiny amounts of gold, gilding, or gold filigree decoration, and different insets, amber or different coloured glass. So here the silver is still the core, but it's being elaborated with small amounts of gold and other materials. And we can see that most spectacularly in this. This is an iconic object from our collections. This is the Hunterston brooch. And if you know Hunterston, you probably think of it as a very golden looking piece of jewellery. And it is. But that gold is only on the front by and large, and it's a very thin veneer, a tiny amount of gold that elaborates a solid silver core. Now, it's a product of a creative fusion. There are styles of decoration here that have come through contact with the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and indeed the gold and the metalworking technology that's being used here arrived via contacts with England. But the shape of the brooch and the use of silver as the medium all show that this is very much at home in Ireland or in Scotland at this time. So all the silver that we've looked at so far is recycled Roman silver. And recycling gives you the chance to add other metals to the mix, to stretch out those silver supplies, to make limited silver go a little bit further. Every time you melt it, you can add a little bit more copper alloy into the mix. And that's what's happened here. This bowl is from a hoard in St Ninian's Isle, dated to around the 8th century AD, and you can see, I hope, that it's green. This is because of the copper alloy that's been added to the mixture, which has corroded as verdigris and come to the surface. This shows us that some of these objects are as little as 50% silver, and this means that we know that a silver appearance was important, but silver purity was less important. All of this changed radically with the arrival of the Vikings and the dawn of the Viking Age. They brought many things, and one of those things was new silver supplies, the first fresh supplies of silver bullion for around 600 years. Here we have Arabic coins from the Islamic world, we have Anglo-Saxon coins, and we have new styles of object that use silver in different ways. We have a type of object called ring money, which is simultaneously a bracelet, so it's jewellery, but it's also bullion. They're made to standard sizes, so they can also be chopped up into standard sized pieces. I hope I've given you a flavour this evening of our exhibition, Scotland's Early Silver. It's free here at the National Museum of Scotland until February 25th, and I hope very much, if you're able, you'll come and experience the first 1,000 years of silver for yourself.